And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with the Game Boy Geek.
Back in 1995, the board gaming world was taken by storm and revolutionized by a game called Settlers of Catan. It was the first really designer board game that hit the mass market. It was the first sort of Euro-style game that sort of made its way to the United States, and it's forever changed how board games are designed and played in the United States and around the world. Well, fast forward 15 years, and recently a new game came out called Settlers of Canaan, which is actually a spin-off and a variation of Settlers of Catan that's based in Israel during the Old Testament times of Joshua. We're going to take out the board, show you how it's played, show you the components, tell you how it differs and how it's the same as Settlers of Catan, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. In Settlers of Canaan, the object is to get the most points in the game by moving your score marker all the way up to the end and get there. Well, how do you score points? Well, there's two major ways you can score points, and that's by building settlements, which look like these little things, and the other is by building cities, which look like these little things. Now, there's two other ways that we'll talk about scoring points later in this, but those are some of the major ways that you score points. Now, to start the game, you see that there's some on here. I have this set up for a two-player game. In two players, each person gets to place 3 settlements and 1 road in successive fashion. So for example, we have the white team and the orange team. So the white team may have gone first and placed this settlement and 1 road, and the settlement has to get put in, at the end of one of the hexes, and then a road has to touch it. And then the orange team gets to put 2 in a row. So they might put one here in a road, here in a road. Then the white player puts 2. He might put one here in a road, here in a road, and then the orange guy puts the last one here in a road. Now, on the last piece that you put down, you get those resources. So let's talk about what the different resources are in the game. Now, when you look at the map here, you can see that there's some different colored squares. Now, the different resources start from over here. There's wool from sheep, there's wood, there's clay, there's ore, and there's wheat. And the sheep you get from any of these places that look like the pasture farms there, or the hills. The wood you get from any of the really darker forest looking places. The clay you get from the red clay areas. The ore you get from the mountainous looking regions. And the wheat you get from the fields there, the wheat fields. Now, well, how do you get those? Well, on a turn, one player is going to roll these 2 dice, and that's an 11. Anywhere you see an 11 on the board, anybody's settlement that touches that gets that resource. In this case, the white player has 1 settlement touching a hex of number 11. So they're going to get 1 ore in their hand. They're going to take that as a resource. The orange player is also going to get some ore, actually, because they're touching 11. Now, at the end of that player's turn, they can, if they want, try to trade. And if it's that person's turn, they can trade with anybody else in the game. They could say, hey, I need some wheat. Can you trade me 2 ore for wheat? Or 1 for 1? And it's a negotiation to try to get what you need to give someone else what they need. Now, other people can trade too if it's not their turn, but they have to trade with the person whose turn it is. So negotiation is a big part of this game. Now, a couple of things that you need to know about other ways to score. So how do we get, how do we score? What other bad things can happen? Well, let's talk about the bad thing first. Anytime a 7 is rolled, which is the most likely number to come up, here is the plague. The plague will get placed by that player on any of them. So let's say I'm the white player, I rolled a 7, I can place this plague anywhere. This plague will go, let's say, here. This player, I basically get to randomly take one of their resources from them, and then any other time that while this plague is on this spot, if an 11's rolled, he does not get this resource. So until another 7's rolled, this will sit here unless there's some special cards that move it. Now, not only does that happen, but if when the plague rolls, anybody has 8 or more resources, they have to lose half of them. So they have to essentially turn in half their resources. So you never want to keep more than 8. You want to stay lower than that. You might be wondering what this spot is here. This is actually a wild card spot. If someone rolls a 10 and you have a settlement touching it, you can get a resource of your choice. Now, how do we go about getting points and building things now that we know how you gain resources? Well, how do we know what to trade them in for? Let's talk about that. Well, over here you can see the tribe of Nephali, and you can see what you get. So you can build a road for 1 wood and 1 clay. You can build another settlement for wood, clay, wheat, and wool, and that gets you 1 point, and you can place basically another city, another settlement. A city requires 2 wheat and 3 ore, and a city is essentially you replace one of your settlements with the city figure, and you get 1 additional point. It's 2 points total because you had a settlement there, and you get 1 additional point by putting a city there. Another one is a development card, which is a wheat, wool, and ore. We'll show you what some of those development cards are. That's another way to score. And special for Canaan, there's a stone for Jerusalem, which is ore and clay. So let's talk about that stone of Jerusalem first. If you have a settlement that's touching this side of Jerusalem here, now again, one of the rules of the game is that you can't place a settlement that's right next to or 1 space away from another settlement. There has to at least be 2 of them. So there would need to have been a second road here and then a settlement, because you can never have a settlement within 1. They always have to be without 2. So let's say this person had a settlement here, and they placed 2 roads, and then they ended up placing another settlement here. Because this white piece here is touching here, they can now build that stone of Jerusalem. And so if they built the stone of Jerusalem, they would put it here, and that's 1 extra way to score in this game. You actually get this King's Blessing card, which is, first of all, you get 2 victory points if you have the most stones in here. So that's another way to move up. Now, if somebody else then later grabs that and gets the most stones, you have to go down 2 victory points, and they go up 2 victory points. So these extra ways to score are constantly in flush throughout the game. Another cool thing about that King's Blessing is once you have something in the Jerusalem's thing, you can trade any, you pick 1 resource and put the card behind here, and that faces through here, and you get to trade 2 for 1. So at any time you could trade, let's say if I put wheat behind here, you could trade 2 wheat for 1 of anything. And that's really cool. Now anytime in the game, you can trade 4 of anything for 1 of anything. So if I have 4 wheats and I really want an ore, I can trade 4, back to the sort of the store pile here and get 1 there. There's some other places here, 3 to 1. If you have a settlement in one of these 3 to 1 places, you can trade 3 of anything for 1 of anything. And if you're in one of these special little harbors, like there's a wool harbor, a wood harbor, an ore harbor, if you're in one of these touching things here, you can do 2 to 1. So in this case, if I was here, if I had a settlement or city here, I could trade 2 ore for 1 anything. So that's pretty much overall sort of most of the way you play the game. There's a couple other ways you can score points. One of them is the most priests, and we're going to get to these development cards in just a moment. The other is the longest road. If you have a road that touches every piece here, and you have at least 5 of them, and they're kind of touching. So it would be 2, 3, 4, 5. If you have 5 roads at least, and you have the longest road, you keep this card, and you have 2 victory points. But again, it's in flux, because if somebody else then has a 6th road and has a longer road than you, they take this card, they move up 2 points, and you move down 2 points. So those are always in flux. Let's take a look at some of these development cards and see how some of this most priests things work. For example, here's a priest. Now before we saw that card that says most priests, as long as you have 3 or more priests, you can get that most priest card and you hold it. And while you hold it, you have 2 extra victory points you get to move yourself. But again, that's one of those ways of scoring that's in flux, where if somebody else has more priests than you, they can take that card from you, get 2 points, and you move down 2 points. So if you throw 3 priests down, and you can use these development cards at the end of any of your 1 turns, but you can't play any development card that you just got that turn. And so here we have Gibeonite Trickery. Look at another player's development cards that are in play and in the hand, and take the development card of your choice and add it to your hand. There's one that just gives you 1 victory point, the City of Refuge. There's, Plentiful Lands. Take any 2 resources, identical or different, from the bank and add them to your hand. There's a Deborah's Song, which all players may take 1 resource of their choice from the bank. Improvements. You may upgrade one of your settlements to a city for the cost of 2 ore and 1 grain, instead of the normal cost. Caravan. You may trade in identical resources 2 for 1 for the remainder of the turn. So again, these development cards are different ways to try and score you points and get you more resources or build more things, which will then, and additionally, will score you more points. So in summary, that's pretty much how you play. You're placing settlements, you're getting points, you're gathering resources as the dice are rolled, you're gathering resources here, you're building either new settlements or you're upgrading settlements to cities, and those are getting you points. You also might gain points by having the most priests, or the king's blessing by having your tokens down here and building the Stone of Jerusalem, or having the longest road. So there's a lot of different ways that you can score these points throughout the game, and you're doing so by grabbing resources and playing them down and negotiating and figuring out what you want to do. And the first person that gets here is the winner. Well, that is Settlers of Canaan. Well, let's see. What do I like about it? Well, first of all, it's played between 2 and 4 players and in 45 minutes. Now, Settlers of Catan is only for 3 to 4 players. One of the reasons why I bought this was because you could play it with 2 players. I have a variant and a rule in the way you set up and the way you score that allows you to play with 2 players. And I do like this game at 2 players. Granted, it's not as good as 3 or 4. There's not as much interaction. There's not as much trading, negotiating. But it does work, and you still can't play, and I do like it enough that I still play it with 2 players. Now, after you've read these rules, you probably could go back and play Settlers of Catan with 2 players with that same ruling variant. So I wouldn't buy this game only for the 2-player variant. You could probably read these rules and then play Settlers of Catan. So I do like that there are rules and that you can play it with 2 players. The other variant, I love the theme. Recently, my wife Denise and I went to Israel. We walked around on a 10-day pilgrimage. We saw all these different areas in Israel, the Old Testament, and walked through 3,000-year-old excavated cities. So seeing this on the map and walking it was really cool for me because I love the theme of that. The theme's brought back even more with this new variant part of this game, which is the Jerusalem Temple. This is a way to score points that you don't have in Settlers of Catan. It's an addition to this. The way of building the temple, you put a settlement near there, and you pay some resources to get the Jerusalem Temple, and the one who has the most has, it's another way of getting 2 points. So it's just another way to score. So these extra way of doing points with the priests instead of the largest army, the longest road, well, now you have an additional way to score, an additional strategy. So I really like that because it adds that variable, that newness that really fits the theme, and it gives you one other place of strategy to go instead of the longest road, instead of the priests, instead of the longest army. So it really is pretty much Settlers of Catan, but you can play it with 2 players. You can add this the Jerusalem Temple. It does have one wild card spot, which I think is really cool. It took that from one of the Settlers of Catan expansions. That's cool. The other major difference here, and some of you are going to love this and some of you are going to hate it, is the board is fixed. So in Catan, you set up the board differently every time. It's random. That helps the replay value. Some people might hate the fixed board. Because of the theme and because it's laid out to look like Old Town Israel in the Old Testament times, it makes sense thematically to have it built that way. And where the specific mountains and fields and hills and such are, and farms, it's very thematic because they are in the regions of Israel that are those types. So it really thematically fits. It goes around the Dead Sea. So I actually like it. It fits the theme. Did I ever have any problems with replay value because, you always go up to the same spot? No, because almost every game, you're going to have different people and people are going to pick different spots, and I don't play it every day, so next time I pick up the game, I don't remember what I took last time. So some people have complained that there's less replay value because of that. I haven't really felt that. It's just different. You may like it, you may not like it, but the way that it fits the theme, I love it. So if you like Settlers of Catan and you're looking for a different way to play it, or you really like the theme of Israel, I would say get this game. It's a cool variant. I love it, and I recommend it.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.